Good evening, respected doctors, all the panelist doctors, as well as the doctors who are viewing this program over Zoom. So, me Nityagopal Chakraborty on behalf of BioBliss, welcoming you all on this wonderful webinar on attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in children. So, today's webinar is being organized by Pediatric Neurology Division of AIIMS Rishikesh in association with Dehradun IIT. And our today's chairperson of this webinar is Dr. Inder Kumar Saraswat. I do welcome Inder Kumar sir. And let me take the privilege to introduce our honorable chairperson for today's webinar, Dr. Inder Kumar Saraswat, who is a DM pediatric neurologist from PGIMER Chandigarh and associate professor and chief in pediatric neurology division, Department of Pediatrics, AIIMS Rishikesh. Sir is the convener, DM Pediatric Neurology Program at AIIMS Rishikesh, authored more than 200 PubMed, indexed national and international publication, authored 5 chapters in various textbooks of pediatrics, area of interest, neuromuscular and neurodegenerative disorder, epilepsy, and neurodevelopmental disorder. So, welcome, Inder sir. Please take your chair and inaugurate the session, sir.
Thank you, Nityaji, for the introduction. We can go to the next slide. Okay. So today's organizer is Dr. Rajiv Kumar Srivastav, sir. He is the current president of IAP Dehradun. He has around 10 papers in his credit. His area of interest is pediatric neurology and neonatology. And along with IAP Dehradun, he is involved in various academic and social activity. He conducted various workshops like NALS, PALS, and NRP programs. He also involved in free consultation to the needy people in this crisis time through the teleconsultation. And he, along with eSanjeevani and IAP Dehradun, also see various orphanages through a central program that was run by Central IAP. And today's moderator for the today's session is Dr. Prateek Kumar Panda. We can go to the next slide. Dr. Prateek did DM in pediatric neurology from AIIMS New Delhi. He is my colleague and assistant professor at AIIMS Rishikesh. He has more than 100 publications in his credit and presented more than 50 posters and oral presentation at various conferences. He has been an invited speaker in various number of the CME programs, and his area of interest is neurodevelopmental disorder and epilepsy. So now I am handing over to the Dr. Rajiv Kumar Srivastav, sir, for the further proceedings. Over to sir.
Thank you, Dr. Inder Kumar ji. And IAP Dehradun welcome all the speakers, chairperson Dr. Inder Kumar and Dr. Prateek Panda, sir, as a moderator, and all the speakers, Dr. Prabjot Kaur, Dr. Pooja Grover, and Dr. Vivek. In the last few months, IAP Dehradun is involved in the organizing pediatric neurology along with BioBliss, and I thank you BioBliss also for their support to the IAP Dehradun. And we have 3 speakers today. Please give the speakers introductory slide of the speakers, please. So Dr. Inder Kumar ji is a Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery from Mahatma Gandhi Medical College, Indore. And he has done masters in pediatrics in 2011 and 12 from Mahatma Gandhi Medical College, Indore. And he has done the DM Pediatric Neurology from AIIMS New Delhi. He was awarded with thesis of ICMR for DM thesis entitled, and a member of International Child Neurology Association, member of Indian Epilepsy Society, and member of Association of Child Neurology. He has around 2 publications in the National Journal and poster presentation. There are 4. Dr. Vivek Sirolia, so Dr. Vivek Sirolia is the first speaker, I think. And the second speaker will be Dr. Prabjot Kaur. Prabjot Kaur, she is a pediatric neurologist. She has done his DM pediatric neurology in 2019 recently, and from the All Indian Institute of Medical Science in New Delhi. She did her MD Pediatrics from Lady Harding Medical College, New Delhi, and DNB Pediatrics from Lady Harding Medical College, New Delhi. His current appointment is Consultant Pediatric Neurology, Rainbow Children's Hospitals, Bangalore. She is a life member of ICNC and life member of Association of Child Neurology India. She has 6 publications in national and international index journal. Our third speaker is Dr. Pooja Grover. She is a consultant pediatric neurologist at Rainbow Children's Hospital, Delhi, and Paras Hospital, Gurgaon. We know Dr. Pooja Grover from last few months. She has an interest in neurology, EEG and neurology. She did her fellowship in pediatric neurology from Jaslok Hospital, Mumbai, and fellowship in electrophysiological study from Cleveland, USA. She did her DNB in pediatrics from Chothi Ram Hospital, Indore. She has 6 publications to her name, published in national and international journals. She is a reviewer of Index Journal, Indian Pediatrics. She has won the scholarship for higher studies from Tata Trust and Bombay Hospital, Mumbai. She is a co-founder and director of Continua Kids. Welcome all the speakers. And I invite our first speaker, Dr. Prabjot Kaur.
Dr. Vivek is the first speaker.
Dr. Vivek is the first speaker. Okay. I invite Dr. Vivek, sir, to speak his talk.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for introducing me. So I will be covering, first of all, good evening to all the participants. And I would like to thank IIP Dehradun, Dr. Pratik and his team and BioBlitz team for providing this opportunity. So I would like to cover etiopathogenesis of and diagnostic criteria of ADHD. So first I will start with a case vignette. A 7-year-old boy studying in class 2nd, born to non-consensus marriage with no adverse antenatal or perinatal event, having difficulty in paying attention, switches from one activity to another in school, often forgetful about daily activities, get easily distracted by the things like travel noises from outside, fidget and swarm when seated and disturb others also. So can you label this child as an ADHD? You can label, but you needed additional input and you have to meet diagnostic criteria for ADHD that will be DSM-4 or 5. And you have to also look for associated comorbidities and in last etiopathogenesis. And treatment is also required. That part will be covered by Dr. Pooja. So I'm only covering the etiopathogenesis. Okay, so what is ADHD? So ADHD is a syndrome that is encompassing poor concentration, marked impulsive, impatient, and excitable behavior. It is predominantly genetic in origin, associated with various inherited deficiency of the dopamine neurotransmitter system. So there are different age-wise presentation of ADHD in preschool children. The most predominant symptoms are impulsivity and hyperactivity. And in adolescent, they are more inattentive, restless, and adults are largely having inattention with periodic impulsivity. But the most common age group that is having ADHD have a combination of symptoms. They're having both inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity. So that is what I want to convey, is that a school age group having combination of symptoms. So what additional inputs are required to make diagnosis? So you need inputs from teachers, parents, and if the child is adolescent, you can do self-reporting also, from which you can get the diagnosis. Rarely investigation is required. Investigation is required to rule out other disorders. And before labeling a child as a ADHD, you need to rule out any vision, hearing impairment. You need to rule out learning disability, any sleep issues, any social stresses, and history of drug intake, toxin intake, medical and neurological history is very important. So in diagnosis, there are no specific physical tests for ADHD. The diagnosis of ADHD require evaluation by different raters in multiple processes. Like parents often that he is not comply with daily routine, overall functioning. Teachers also reports that poor academic performances, disruption of classroom, fighting during lessons break. And child also has self-esteem issues that I am not too good, I am too stupid. And peers they have very few points and frequently get rejected by the peers. So the most common initially criteria that was used to diagnose ADHD was DSM-4. It is not used now because it's developmentally insensitive and the symptoms is only based on a field trial conducted with elementary school age boy. It's a more of a categorical, not a continuous view. And the requirement of symptoms is arbitrary before 7 years of age. So with these controversies, new criteria that with 3 important changes came up, that is DSM-5, that include the increased age of onset from 7 years to 12 years, decreases symptom threshold for the patient more than 17 years of age from 6 to 5 symptoms, and enabling ADHD to be diagnosed in presence of an autism spectrum disorder. So what is the DSM-5 criteria that is used to diagnose ADHD? So of children having persistent pattern of inattention or hyperactivity or impulsivity that interferes with functioning or development. So it includes inattention and or hyperactivity or impulsivity. So 6 or more symptoms are present for children up to 16 years and 5 or more symptoms for adolescents 17 years older than adult.
Sorry, Vivek sir, only 1 minute for interrupting. I think something is, somebody's put something is interrupting, overlapping over the windows, and it is requesting for please remove this window away from the presentation.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay. Vivek sir, now it's okay. Once again,
it's okay. We can go on.
Make it presentation mode.
No, it's not working.
Make it presentation. Now it's okay. Fine.
Now it's okay? Okay.
It's okay, sir.
So DSM-5 criteria must include inattention and hyperactivity. 6 or more symptoms are required for children up to 16 years of age and 5 or more symptoms for older and adults. And the symptoms of inattention have been present for at least 6 months. And that includes failure to give close attention, make careless mistakes in school, often has trouble holding attention, tasks or play activity, often doesn't seem to listen when spoke to directly. So these inattention symptoms, at least 6 or more should be present in children up to 16 years or 5 or more in 17 years old. And hyperactivity or impulsivity should be present, similar 6 or more symptoms and 5 or more for adults, and that should be also present for 6 months. And one of the most important things that these symptoms must be present before 12 years of age, and several present symptoms are present in 2 or more settings, that is at the school, at home, or work, or with friends or relatives. And there is clear evidence that these symptoms interfere or reduce quality of social, school, or work functioning. And these symptoms do not happen only during course of schizophrenia or any other psychological disorder. Symptoms are not better explained by other mental disorders like mood disorder, anxiety disorder, or personality disorder. So what are the disadvantages? The still disadvantage is that the word often is used, but that is still subjective. And the developmental variability of a child behavior in consistent different settings and different time same setting also leads to diagnostic confusion. And also fails to add neurological conditions like epilepsy, sleep disorders that need to be excluded before diagnosing an ADHD. So these are the disadvantages of DSM-5. So now coming on to the step diagnosis approach to ADHD, first you have to gather baseline data from more than one source, that is from the teacher, from the parents, or self-reporting. Then you have to look for other explanation like sleep deprivation, social stressors for these problems. Then you have to be watchful and wait for symptoms to evolve or whether they persisted or disappear. If the problem remained, then you have to offer a minimal intervention such as bibliotherapy. That is, you have to provide them information brochures or self-help training for the parents. If minimal intervention is not sufficient, you have to provide counseling session using simple techniques to teach new attitudes and coping skills. If still the symptoms present, then you have to provide intensive therapy under tertiary or secondary care. If you gather data from first source and you have found that the problem is very urgent, that is associated conduct disorder, then you have to directly go to step 6, that you have to provide him more intensive therapy. So there are some approaches that are freely available that you can have open access, like interviews that is having schedule for affective disorder and schizophrenia in school age children. You have also diagnostic interviews scheduled for children and adolescent psychiatric assessment, and also parent interview for child settlement. Child ADHD chatty is also used. That is a structured telephone interviews for teacher. But all these criteria are based on DSM-4. There are no such interviews or scale that is based on DSM-5. And the other scale, that is Vanderbilt ADHD diagnostic rating scale, Swanson-Nolan Pelham rating scales. These are versions for parents or caregiver teachers. They are mainly used for diagnosing the symptoms ADHD and associated comorbidities, and they also rate symptom severity so that the treatment can be planned according to it. So most common used is Vanderbilt ADHD. Swanson-Nolan rating scale are most commonly used because they are easily available, and these are having open access. So important rating tool for ADHD that is most common is CORNER, that is teachers parent patient rating scale, that assess and monitors response to treatment. Others are SNAP4, SCAM scales, and you also need child behavior check will this behavior assessment system for children, ADHD rating scales, and Brown ADD scales for diagnosing other comorbidities. So CORNER scale is mainly for severity and comorbidity, is useful for age group 6 to 18 years of age, and it also includes propositional cognitive problem, hyperactivity, social problems, and ADHD index also. So accordingly, you can plan your treatment, and you can also assess that how patient perform on the therapy. So for follow-up, also you can use this scale to assess the response to the treatment. So these are all assessing scales, that CORNER's parent rating scale, CORNER self-reporting short version is also available, that is having 40 items in each for parents, for teachers, and also for self-reporting in adolescent case group. So this is the most common scale along with Vanderbilt that is used for rating ADHD. So coming on to the diagnostic approach, if the child with a history of hyperactivity and inattention, if you do IQ assessment and child behavior checklist assessment, if you have ruled out ADHD, if you have ruled out ID, if it's not ID, then when child is having normal IQ on child behavior checklist, he is having hyperactivity and attention problems, you apply DSM-5. If it fulfills, then you apply CORNERs and find out the associated comorbidities. If you have comorbidities, for example, learning disability, then you will do specific test that is available for learning disability, that is GLAD and Newman's battery. If the DSM-5 does not fulfill, then you look for associated problems that will lead to similar symptoms. Then you monitor and intervene across the setting, treat whichever is more significant. So this is the approach. So now coming on to the etiology, how ADHD will occur. So there is no single risk factor that is necessary or sufficient to cause ADHD. So ADHD is mainly multifactorial. The several genetic and environmental risk factors act together individually, and they act together to increase the susceptibility, and each having a small individual effect. So coming on to the genetics of ADHD. So genetics, that all the chromosomal syndrome, common variants as well as rare and low frequency copy number variants will cause ADHD. But what is significant that the common variants that explain 40% of inheritability have a smaller effect on the expression of the disorders, while the rare chromosomal abnormalities like 22q11, 2 deletion syndrome, Turner syndrome, they have a large effect, though they are rare, but they have large effect on expression of these disorders. So that is what I want to tell. The common variants explain approximately 40% of the heritability of ADHD, but compared with the rare causes, individual common variants have smaller effects on the expression of the disorder. So ADHD is also associated with some genetic disorders that I have already explained, that Fragile X, neurofibromatosis, Turner syndrome, Williams syndrome. So all these have a high prevalence of ADHD. Coming on to the genetic risk, the family studies have shown that the risk to the sibling increases 2 to 5 times if the other sibling having disorder, and 3 to 5 increase likelihood if the parents are also affected. The numerous studies in monozygotic twins also showed that the hereditary shown to be 76%, and several genes have been identified that are associated with ADHD. The most common are involved in dopamine transmission that plays an important role in frontostriatal pathway that we will discuss later on. So basically, as we discussed earlier, that ADHD is caused by inherited deficiency of dopamine neurotransmitter system. So if there will be defect in dopamine metabolism or receptor that are predominantly present in frontostriatal pathway, it will lead to ADHD. And these are the common genes that are associated with ADHD. And environmental factors, they indirectly play greatest role in non-shared family environment. They act through interaction with the genes and variants that regulate gene expression, that like promoters and translated regions of gene loci that encode microRNA. So the potential non-genetic causes are maternal lifestyle, smoking, alcohol abuse, cocaine, stressors, medication, anticonvulsant, levetiracetam, valproic acid, benzodiazepine. They most commonly cause ADHD, and ADHD is twice common in very low birth weight, possibly mediated by subtle lesions in frontostriatal brain circuits, and the post-natal exposure to toxin, leads, lead, pesticides, food deficiency of omega-3 fatty acids. They all lead to the indirect alteration in gene expression that is responsible for causing ADHD. So the possible development pathway of ADHD, that if a genetic risk factor is present associated with with environmental factors like prenatal alcohol, tobacco exposure, with disturbances, dopamine transmission or abnormalities in frontal lobe and basal ganglia, the child is failure to adequately suppress inappropriate response and having a cognitive deficient in working memory, self-directed speech, self-regulation, having behavior symptoms of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. That will lead to impairment in social and academic development, disruptions in parenting, and associated oppositional and conductive disorder symptoms. So now coming on to the mechanism that is responsible for attention deficit and hyperactivity, the one most is the dysregulation of structure and function of the frontal subcortical cerebral pathway that plays a main important role in cognitive function in children, and abnormal dopamine signaling in partly by deficiency of noradrenaline in the reticular activating system. That we will discuss, discussing in subsequent slides. So coming on to the first, we'll discuss what brain parts are involved in ADHD. So cortical region, mainly prefrontal cortex and cingulate cortex, they involved in executive function like working memory, decision making, planning, task switching, response inhibition, and subcortical regions are also involved like limbic system, including amygdala, basal ganglia. Cerebellum is also involved in execution, in controlling executive function. So all three regions of brain play a very important role in ADHD. So coming on to the dorsolateral frontal cortex, that is mainly involved with working memory, ventromedial, prefrontal cortex that helps in complex decision making, strategic planning, parietal cortex helps in orientation of attention, and anterior and dorsal cingulate cortex will be involved in affective and cognitive components of executing. So these, along with basal ganglia, include comprising nucleus accumbens, caudate nucleus, and putamen from the frontostriatal circuit. So the pathology of these ADHD will revolve along these pathways. That is the most important, frontostriatal circuit. So this is the part as I've shown. I have told you dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, ventromedial cortex, and parietal cortex. And these cingulate cortex, they are all involved in executive function. and these together will form frontostriatal cortex along with cerebellum that is also involved in controlling executive functions. So coming on to the neurotransmitter circuit, as we all know that dopamine is involved in mainly in frontostriatal circuit that connects the frontal lobe and cingulate cortex to the stratum, and it is mainly responsible for planning and initiation of motor response, activation, switching reaction to novelty, and processing of reward, while noradrenaline, that is the main neurotransmitter involved in reticulating activating system and limbic system, helps in arousal modulation, signal to noise ratios in cortical areas, and also in cognitive preparation of urgent stimuli. So there is alteration of neurotransmitter circuit in ADHD. So executive function, as I told you earlier, executive control and corticocerebral network coordinates the executive function. In functional MRI, the effective executive control networks are underactivating and having a lower internal functional connectivity. Similarly, reward system like in ventromedial, prefrontal cortex, and orbitofrontal cortex and ventral stratum, these all will help in these through interconnection respond to anticipation and receipt of reward. And in ADHD, while doing functional MRI, they also shown abnormal behavior and neural response to reward in ADHD. So the children will have early reward in case of ADHD. They will not wait for their reward. So abnormal behavior and neuronal response to reward is impaired in ADHD. So alert network that involves the frontal cortex as well as your parietal cortex with the thalamus also get impaired in ADHD. And multiple MRI studies shows that ADHD associated with less pronounced or absent anticorrelation.
Dr. Vivek sir, I request him to please taking the time into account.
Okay, just 2 slides.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Please continue.
So ADHD associated with less pronounced or absent anticorrelation between the default mode network and the cognitive control network. There's lower connectivity within default mode network and lower connectivity in cognitive and motivational loops of frontostriatal circuit. So significance of dopamine transport protein defect, as we all know that dopamine is the main neurotransmitter in frontostriatal circuit. So if there's hypodopaminergic state, it will lead to ADHD symptoms. So if there is mutation and increased reuptake of dopamine by DHT from the synapse, that can result in hypodopaminergic state, and it will lead to ADHD-like symptoms. Similarly, modification of the receptors will lead to hypodopaminergic state, and that also will lead to impaired neurotransmission, and that will lead to ADHD-like symptoms. So coming on to the key messages, that no single risk factor is necessary or sufficient to cause ADHD. Multifactorial causation of ADHD is consistent with heterogeneity of the disorder, which is shown by its extensive psychiatric comorbidity, and diagnosis of ADHD reliable and valid when evaluated with standard criteria of psychiatric disorder, and rating scales and clinical interview facilitate diagnosis and aid screening. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Prateek.
Thank you, Dr. Vivek, for exhaustive talk on etiology and diagnostic criteria for ADHD. And we will take questions on this topic once we finish our all the lecture series. Our next speaker is Prabjot Kaur. Dr. Prabjot Kaur will speak on clinical features and holistic evaluation of ADHD. Dr. Prabjot Kaur.
Thank you, Dr. Rajiv, for that nice introduction. And thank you to Dr. Prateek and Dr. Inder for organizing this and giving me this opportunity. So I'll be discussing about the clinical features and holistic evaluation of ADHD. So already Dr. Vivek has given us a very nice idea about all the tools that we use for diagnosis of ADHD and how what is the underlying pathophysiology. What I'll be discussing about is that what is the ADHD, what are the main clinical features and how does it evolve with age, What are the comorbidities associated with ADHD? And finally, how do we evaluate a child who presents with ADHD symptoms? So when we talk about ADHD, basically comprises of hyperactivity, poor concentration, and impulsive or impatient behavior. So these three are the core features of ADHD. Hyperactivity pertains to excessive motor activity, and the presentation may depend on the individual's age. So what this line means is that a child may present with different hyperactivity symptoms as compared to an adolescent or an adult. So a child may just be very hyperactive, just moving around. On the other hand, an older individual might be fidgety, might not be able to sit through a class or a meeting. And this hyperactivity may be more evident in structured situations that require self-control. For example, for a child to sit through a class, for an adult to sit through a meeting. Inattention, basically, like the word itself gives the idea, it is easy diversion and loss of interest. Patients or people who have inattention are more forgetful, and the task organization is difficult. Impulsivity is reckless and impatient behavior, and the kind of behaviors which is socially not acceptable, or it is kind of social disinhibition. People are not as appropriate socially behaving as they should be. So major groups of ADHD are divided on the basis of the dominant symptoms. So we may have predominantly inattentive phenotype, we may have predominantly hyperactive impulsive phenotype, and we may have a combination phenotype in which both the sets of symptoms are present. And as Dr. Vivek had told, in childhood age, we commonly get a combination of symptoms. So ADHD is a very common pediatric and adult neurodevelopmental and behavioral disorder. It is in fact the third most common mental health disorder. Pooled worldwide prevalence is around 7.2% according to the AAP. In India, we do not have a pan-India study to assess the prevalence, but pockets of study assessed at one or two places put the prevalence at around 11.3 to 32%, which is actually very large if you compare to the worldwide prevalence, but it is probably because of the study bias or small groups of population that was studied. And it is diagnosed more in boys as compared to the girls in India as well as worldwide. So just looking at how this came into being. So if you look at the timeline, it was 1775 when this symptom of ADHD was first described in a German textbook. And it took us nearly 200 years when DSM-3 actually operationalized, gave us a diagnostic criteria for DSM. And in another 15-20 years, we have CDC described ADHD actually a serious public health problem. And then we had drugs, both stimulants and non-stimulants, which were approved for management of ADHD. So as Dr. Vivek had told, the onset of ADHD is in childhood, and the symptom onset should be present less than 12 years of age. It can be present, the symptoms can be present in preschool years at 4 to 6 years, childhood years, adolescent years, or adulthood years. In children less than 4 years also, the symptoms can be present, but diagnosis can be a little tricky in very small children. Clinical manifestations and the effects of ADHD, they change as per age. So if we look at the developmental course or the symptoms which are age dependent, what we see is that in younger children, less than the preschool children, it is predominantly behavioral disinhibition, emotional lability. As we go to the childhood age group, which is from childhood to adolescence, now this is the time when there is a full expression of ADHD symptoms. All the diagnostic tools that we use can be used for completely diagnosing ADHD, and most of the kids will fulfill all these symptoms. Along with this, the kids can have comorbidities like school failure, peer rejection, neurocognitive dysfunctions can be present. As we go further in adolescence age group, what happens is that the hyperactive and impulsive symptoms come down, but the inattention persists. In addition to that, there's a lot of other things that come into play once the ADHD kids who are not treated. So there's a lot of low self-esteem, social abuse, substance abuse, risk behaviors which start coming at this age. So why do we want to talk about ADHD? Why is the recognition important? So see, whenever we have persons with ADHD, so they have hyperactivity, their attention is poor, there is impulsive behavior. So whatever age appropriate, social appropriate tasks or functioning that they have, they are not able to do that. So the executive functioning is poor. A school-going child might not be able to complete his schoolwork, might not be able to pay attention in the class, might not be able to learn much. An adult who is having a poor executive function or ADHD symptoms might not be able to function in a appropriate way, what is expected out of him. So ultimately, it leads to functional impairment, which affect the various domains of a person's life. So there may be individual level problems like low self-esteem, family-related issues like parental stress, conflicts, sibling conflicts, and which may result in a non-cohesive family unit, which again has effect on the development and overall good, healthy development of a child. These kids who have ADHD are more likely to be expelled from schools, more likely to have lower grades. They can disrupt other kids' education. And ultimately, it all has a bearing on the long-term economic outcomes. And if you look at health and society as a whole, these kids have more accident risk, even as adults. There are more hospital visits, ER visits. They have missing opportunities, miss education opportunities, and overall societal acceptance is poor. So that is why, because it has got long-lasting impacts on the overall development and outcomes, it is very important that we recognize these symptoms. And as pediatricians, we are the first point of contact. So we should recognize these symptoms and we should start early intervention or management for these kids in addition to the evaluation. So developmental impact of ADHD, as we have already seen, younger children have behavioral issues, poor academic performance. Poor self-esteem is something that is seen to persist from school age to adulthood. And risk behaviors are commonly seen in adolescent age group and young adults, older adults, in the form of substance abuse, increased risk of accidents, high risk sexual behaviors, and all can be seen. If we look at how these symptoms develop as a person grows from childhood to adulthood, so as we had talked about, the inattention part persists, hyperactivity and impulsivity decline. If we look at older people, like adults who were followed up for around 25 years, they might not meet the full diagnostic criteria for ADHD. So all the tools that we discussed earlier, they may not be fulfilling ADHD criteria per se. But if we look at the functional impairment and impairing symptoms, they are present in almost 65 to 75% of the adults. So even though they may not fulfill the ADHD diagnostic criteria, there are huge functional impairment impacts for these children. So this was a brief idea about what is ADHD and why is it important to recognize it, and how does it affect the overall life quality of a person as a person grows from childhood to adult. So why do we want to evaluate these kids? So the aim of evaluation is first to confirm the core symptoms of ADHD. We want to exclude other differential diagnoses, and we want to identify coexisting behavioral, emotional, or medical disorders. So evaluation, so this looks like a busy slide, but it is very simple. We'll just go through it. So evaluation for a child with ADHD is similar to any other child who presents to us. So major component is medical and physical evaluation, which includes good history taking and examination. So medical wise, as Dr. Vivek had discussed, that prenatal, perinatal exposures, genetic factors, they all can have effect on the ADHD symptoms. So we want to take history of prenatal exposures to drugs, tobacco, any medicines mother has been taking, any perinatal complications or infections, CNS infections, head traumas, any sleep disturbances. It is important to ask this question because sleep disturbance in a child can just present like hyperactivity or ADHD symptoms. An adult and adolescent might have increased daytime sleepiness, but kids might just have hyperactivity. Any medications that the child is taking for any other condition, especially conditions like psychological conditions or epilepsy, they can have bearing on the behavior also. Family history of similar behaviors, like we had seen in the previous presentation, that if one child in a family has ADHD, there's a high chance that another child can also have the same. Physical examination, it is important to screen for vision and hearing. We should look for any dysmorphic features or neurocutaneous markers, which can point towards an underlying neurological condition. A good, complete neurological examination is a must, and we observe the child's behavior when we are taking this history. Development and behavior is a detailed assessment. So what we want to screen in our OPD visit is, we want to know what is the age of onset of these symptoms and how long have the symptoms been present, in what all settings it occurs, and how has the development of the child been, especially the language milestones, as autism spectrum disorders can have a common comorbidity of ADHD, and both can be present also. School absences, which indicates how much is these symptoms affecting the actual functioning of a child, and presence of any psychosocial stressors. Educational evaluation is the detailed ADHD evaluation, like Dr. Vivek had discussed earlier. ADHD specific rating scales and information from multiple people, teachers, caregivers, etc. So coming to investigation wise, so investigations are not required for all the kids. One thing that we do for all kids should be vision and hearing screening, because absence of these sensory modalities or impairment of the sensory modalities can result in hyperactivity symptoms. And the management agent is completely different for these kids. So there's no role of a routine EEG, MRI, CT in cases in kids who have ADHD and have a normal development and examination. The investigation should be tailored according to a particular child. Associated comorbidities like epilepsy, developmental delay, dysmorphism, suspected genetic disorders, we should go ahead and do all the workup that is necessary for this children. So coming to differential diagnosis, so these are not in strict sense differential diagnosis, but the slide is here just to give an idea that there are many conditions which can present just like with hyperactivity symptoms, but they may not be just hyperactivity, they may be underlying other conditions. So it again highlights the importance of a good history, good neurological examination, as well as a good general physical examination. So hearing or vision impairment should be ruled out, thyroid dysfunction, severe anemia, lead poisoning, sleep disorders, conditions like fetal alcohol syndrome or medication side effects, especially in epilepsy, psychiatric disorders, can present with ADHD symptoms. Certain genetic syndromes, deletion duplications can also present with ADHD. So coming to comorbidities, we'll be discussing comorbidities because it is very common in kids with ADHD. One thing, almost 50 to 90% of kids with ADHD have at least one comorbidity. The other thing is that these comorbid conditions might require a management in their own respect, and sometimes treating these comorbidities may result in decrease in ADHD symptoms. So the commonest comorbidities associated with ADHD include specific learning disorders and oppositional defiant disorders. So SLD is present in almost 50% of the kids with ADHD. Behavioral personality disorders like obsessive compulsive disorders, oppositional defiant disorders, conduct disorder, personality disorders can be present, anxiety disorders, substance abuse. Tourette and tics can have ADHD as a very, very prominent associated symptoms. Mood disorders like depression, bipolar disorders, or mood dissociation disorders can be associated. And autism spectrum disorder is associated in almost 30 to 70% of the cases. And the reverse is also true. So many kids with ASD have ADHD as a comorbidity. So special considerations we want to give for kids with epilepsy, because epilepsy per se as well as the medications can cause ADHD. So we have to take this into our complete treatment plan and see what we can change or alter here. Sleep disorders can present with ADHD. So in these cases, we would want to target the sleep disorder or improve the sleep disorder in itself. Developmental coordination disorders, psychological trauma, post-traumatic kids can have ADHD, brain injury patients, and many kids with incontinence, with daytime and nocturnal enuresis, fecal incontinence can present with ADHD symptoms. So it is important to know that these conditions can have ADHD as a comorbidity, because one thing is we want to manage these primary conditions. Other thing is that if the ADHD is a prominent symptom, we do want to manage ADHD also. So how do we approach a child who presents with symptoms and signs of ADHD? So when we put it all together, we have to keep in mind all the comorbidities. We have to keep in mind all the associated conditions which can present with predominantly ADHD symptoms. So we take a detailed history, developmental history examination. We look for, we do a detailed neurological examination. If it is all okay, we assess for comorbidities. And then as Dr. Vivek had discussed, we use ADHD specific tools. We use parental interviews. And once we have diagnosed ADHD, we intervene in the form of behavior therapy or pharmacotherapy, which will be discussed further. On the other hand, if we have a child with intellectual disability, developmental delay, genetic disorders, or epilepsy, or any other condition which indicates to us that it is not just ADHD, it is something which is associated with ADHD, we should initiate appropriate workup and management and do intervention. For these kids also, now this is a new thing, for these kids also we can use ADHD specific tools, especially in kids like autism spectrum disorders, and we should start intervention early. So appropriate workup and management for these conditions should go hand in hand with ADHD management. And it is essential that we screen for vision and hearing issues for all children. So to summarize, some take-home points would be that it is very, very essential to identify and intervene ADHD in children when they come for routine vaccination visits, they come for other minor ailments which bring them to the OPD for any sort of a thing. So we should try to identify these kids early. A good basic history and examination is very, very important. It goes a long way. We should rule out vision and hearing issues. We should screen out for comorbidities. And early identification and early referral for interventions is very, very important. So thank you. With that, I'll end.
Thank you, Dr. Pooja. Prabjot, on diagnostic evaluation of children with ADHD with holistic way. And important thing is that we should diagnose the ADHD as early as possible so that the child can grow normally. That is very important. We will take question on this topic after the end of the session. Our third speaker is Dr. Pooja Grover. She is going to speak on management and prognosis of the ADHD. So Dr. Pooja, as you all know, she is a very good speaker and spoken very well earlier also. Dr. Pooja, over to you. Dr. Pooja, I think you are mute.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Everybody can hear me?
Yeah. Perfect.
So a very good evening, and thank you everyone for giving me this platform to speak out. And thank you IIP Dehradun, thank you BioBliss, and everybody who's giving me a patient hearing. And we had two wonderful speakers, Dr. Vivek and Dr. Prabjot, and I think I would like to do some justice with them. So before I start, my topic basically is now how to manage this.
Excuse me, ma'am, make it presentation mode.
Sorry, I could not.
Make it presentation mode, yeah.
Present. Oh, yes. Yes. Okay. So before I start, my topic today is like management and prognosis. So we already know now how to make the diagnosis, what are the lacunae. So with my first slide, I just want to have a pictorial picture of basically how does inattention looks like. Because for hyperactivity, everybody will know that once a child comes into the clinic, he'll just be on top of everything, throwing up, idhar fekega, udhar bhagega. You can very well visualize ki ye bacche ko to ADHD hai, because all your the things on your platform, all your desk would be thrown apart. He'll just look in, finger out everything, pick up your phone. But for inattention, you know, it is very difficult sometimes, and it's the thing which is very much missed in, and that's why I want to show you the picture. And that is why, according to the guidelines from DSM-5, they have increased the age from 7 years to 12 years, because inattention was very much difficult to pick up at 7 years of age or 8 years of age, because when the syllabus was very less in the school, the parents were like, it's okay. And as the syllabus increased, and then they realize the child is not doing good, and they come up with poor scholastic performance, they were able to pick up, okay, this is what you called as inattention, and that is why the child is unable to perform. And so with this, I will show you how does inattention look like. So moving on to the next slide. So this is a child, again, 5 years of age. Till 4 years, mother had no concern. This was a mixed type of ADHD, had both the features of hyperactivity and impulsivity. Now look at it. There is an ongoing class which is there. So this is a class which is going on. He's doing Bichara online class. This is like a COVID state, and he's doing online class. The teacher is speaking, and look out his expression where he's looking. There is a big window in front of him where there is a jhula which is lying there. There are birds flying, and the teacher is speaking, and look what he is doing.
I know you want to say something.
What are you thinking?
To show. Yes, Savitri. Coming in my window. Savitri, can you come and
So if you can just see the class was going on, the mother was recording, and you could see the expression of the child, that the child was looking somewhere else, and he was not at all attentive in the class, and he was looking just outside the window. And as soon as the mother said, "Kya hua? Kya kar rahe ho?" So he just regained consciousness. And then he said, wo window bahar. And then after the mother just said, ki jo focus on the screen, he started focusing. So this is how inattention looks like. And you can see very well that this is, now he's responding because the mother has asked. So he's responding ki main wahan chidiya dekh raha tha, wahan chidiya ud rahi hai. And you can very well see in this video that this is very close resemblance to absent seizures. So that is why Dr. Prabhjot has said that you have to make sure that before you make the diagnosis, because if this child once went to a psychologist and he just made the diagnosis of inattention, and similarly with the complaint of other child who also went with the same symptoms was made the diagnosis of inattention, but we'll see later on what the other child had. So this was the first child which was diagnosed with inattention, and this is how inattention looks like. So now let's go to the management part of it. So to manage a child, we have like from 4 to 18 years of age. If the child does not have any comorbid condition, it should be, and it is usually managed by a pediatrician. And so the importance of this talk. And so we should be able, as pediatrician, we should be able to recognize and treat. But the condition is the child should be from 4 to 18 years. Why 4 to 18 years? Because 4 years of age, it's very difficult for you to pick up. And I think this is the domain of the pediatric neurologist or the psychologist or the developmental pediatrician. Also, the second condition is the child should be without comorbid condition. So as Dr. Prabhjot has already highlighted that ADHD is always or mostly associated with a lot of comorbid condition. You should always rule out first all these comorbid condition because they have a different treatment modalities, which is a very specialized thing. And a pediatrician should treat a plain case of ADHD. It is his domain. And so we'll proceed forward with that. So once you make the diagnosis of by DSM-5 criteria, as Dr. Vivek has already told that out of 9 criteria of inattention, you should have 6. And if the age is more than 17 years, then you can just be really cool with 5 criteria only, if you fulfill only 5. So as you can see, as the age progresses, the number of hyperactivity symptoms or the impulsivity symptoms goes down. And that is why the number of criteria required for giving the diagnosis under the DSM-5 criteria reduces from 6 to 5. So after you have done the diagnosis by DSM-5 criteria, you should always do the ADHD scaling. As Dr. Vivek has told, he has shown you so many different scales. But for me, as when I see, I always ask from 2 domains, from 2 different places. One is by the parents, the questionnaire, which is to be fulfilled by the parents, and the other from the teachers, because the teachers give you a better glimpse of whatever the child is doing. So it's always better to get it from 2 different places, from 2 different circumstances and situations. So that is why if you get all the 3, which fulfills all the criteria and tells you the severity, I think the child should be managed, as we are going to discuss in the further slides. So what are the main goals and how the child is treated? The therapeutic modalities are behavioral interventions, educational interventions, and then comes the role of medication. So there are 3 modalities by which we can treat this. So the choice of intervention depends on the age of the child. So a child who is from 4 to 6 years of age, behavioral intervention comes in much better as compared to the medication parts. So you always stress on the behavioral interventions. And if you have very, very high severity of ADHD in between 4 to 6 years, the only medication which you can try is methylphenidate, and you should not try amphetamine or atomoxetine. So this is the take-home message. Although if you will go with the practical settings, a lot of our parents will dread this medication. They will just ignore this medication maybe till 7 years, 10 years, 12 years. So we have children who come with ADHD who have been untreated ADHD with conduct disorder, with anxiety disorders, with a lot of comorbidities because they have not been treated well on time. So let's go next to that. So a child who is above 6 years of age, now the role of medications comes in much above than behavioral therapy. And it has been proven time and again that if you work and join these 2 together, the results are much more better. But mind it, after 6 years, beyond 6 years, you have to start with the medication if you fulfill the criteria for the DSM-5 for ADHD. it is very, very hard to convince the parents. So always make sure with the first meeting, after you make the diagnosis, even though the child is 7 years or 8 years, don't push for the medication right in the first sitting. Explain the parents that इस बच्चे को जो है कुछ आपकी हेल्प की जरूरत है. This child requires a lot of help. Try to do behavioral therapy, and in the long run, show them the consequences. If the child does not do well, he may have conduct, he may have other problems. So better to start with medication, because in our practical knowledge, we have seen as soon as the child comes in and you make the diagnosis and you start with the medication, this does not go well with the parents. So make sure that you spend a lot of time telling them about कि क्या हो सकता है आगे अगर हमने medication नहीं दिया, why your child was so do not have any friends, why the child does not do well with the studies in spite of having good IQ, in spite of having so much better caliber, because of the lack of inattention and hyperactivity. And if you treat it with medication, a lot will come better. Show them the rosy picture once the medication would be started. So also I want to tell you that dietary interventions basically are not recommended both by the American Academy of Pediatrics as well as NICE guidelines, although NICE guidelines give you certain criteria which we'll discuss later about the dietary interventions. Now, what is to be told to the parents? So tell the parents एक बहुत अच्छा daily schedule बनाइए छोटे छोटे काम का कि पहले जो है हम ब्रश करेंगे, ब्रश करने के बाद हम वॉशरूम में नहाने के लिए जाएंगे, फिर उसके बाद हम ड्रेसअप करेंगे, फिर उसके बाद हम स्कूल बस में जाएंगे. Telling this all in small things helps them in creating that picture in the brain, and that helps in getting a lot of things done. Else, if you would have seen the movie Tare Zameen Par, where the child has dyslexia, if you will see, he was just brushing the teeth for throughout hours, and the mother was rushing in and out. So this all happens with children who have got inattention type of ADHD, where they just do the brushing throughout, like from 7 to 7:30, they have still not brushed. So make sure that in the washroom, tell the mother that write down, okay, from 7 to 7:15, we'll do the brushing. After 15 minutes, the mother will knock. Brushing ho gayi? Okay. From 7:15 to 7:30, we will do the bath. So you have to make down small timetables, put it at the respective places where the child is doing that activity, so that the child get to know कि हाँ ये मुझे करना है, ये मुझे करना है, and there has to be regular reminders. So every 5 minutes, the mother has to knock. Brush kar liya. So that really helps them to get the things done. And now using chart and checklist, all the parents who've got the children with ADHD, they have got all their homes just वो पूरा कैलेंडर एंड चार्ट लगा होना चाहिए. बिकॉज जो है किचन में अगर आपने जो है ये खाना डिनर जो है वो 20 मिनट्स में खत्म कर लिया, you will have a star for today. So that chart should be just above the dining table. Okay, so you earned on 17th of March, you earned a star for eating the dinner in 20 minutes. Now let's see for tomorrow. So these chart has to be there everywhere, so that acts as a moral booster for the child and just helps to mitigate inattention. Distraction has to be at the minimum. So like you saw in the video, there was a child who has got a online class, but then there is a window there which has got birds and swings. So obviously he'll focus on the birds and swing and the window and the nature rather than listening to whatever the teacher is saying. So you have to limit the distractions. So what you have to do, आपको जो है उसका face उस तरफ को करना चाहिए जहां पर window ना हो, towards a wall which is bare. अगर उस wall पे भी जो है कोई photo picture लगी होगी तो वो उसको ही निहारता रहेगा. So make sure that there are less of distractions whenever a class for these children are to be taken. Similarly, there should be limited choices कि अगर ये करोगे तो ये होगा, ये नहीं कि ये भी करना होगा, फिर उसके बाद ये करना होगा, फिर उसके बाद ये करेंगे. No, पहले ये करेंगे, फिर ये खत्म होगा, then we will go to this. That's it. उसके बाद का आगे का you don't have to elaborate now. Now, similarly, providing specific and logical places for the child to keep his books, because you know what happens in children who have got inattention, वो कभी अपना compass box स्कूल में घुमाएंगे, कभी किताब रखना भूल जाएंगे, टाइम टेबल जो है 10 बार पढ़ेंगे, उसमें जो मेजर चीज थी जो कल लेके जानी है, जिसका टेस्ट है, वो भूल जाएंगे. सो मेक श्योर दैट यू कीप ऑल द थिंग एट द स्पेसिफिक प्लेसेस सो द चाइल्ड नोज कि मेरी नोटबुक्स यहाँ रखी हैं, मेरा टॉय यहाँ रखा है, मेरे कपड़े यहाँ रखे हैं, मेरे खिलौने यहाँ रखे हैं, एंड उन जो चीजें हैं उसकी वहां रखी हूँ. उसमें भी ये मेरा पेंसिल बॉक्स है, यहाँ पे मेरा कलर बॉक्स रहता है, यहाँ पे मेरा ये रहता है, सो दैट ही नोज कि जो है ये चीजें मेरी यहाँ मुझे मिलनी है और यहाँ से मुझे उठानी है. As I've already discussed, setting small and reachable goals. Rewarding positive behavior has to be done. So जो है अगर जो है आपने 20 minutes में जो है अपना ब्रेकफास्ट फिनिश कर लिया, then you know I'm putting a star for you. खूब सारे जो है आप स्टार और वो खरीद के लेकर आइए बाजार से, और जैसे ही वो हो जाता है तो उसके हैंड पर जो है एक स्टार चिपका दीजिए. तो वो जो है कार्टून्स होते हैं, छोटे छोटे स्टार्स होते हैं, सो दे जस्ट एंजॉय दिस ऑल. ओके, आई अर्नड अ स्टार, सो टेल देम ओके यू हैव अर्नड दिस. So that makes them feel better कि okay, I have earned it, I am something good, I can do it. So all small rewards कि आज जो है आप अगर ये कर लोगे तो आज आपका मनपसंद खाना बनेगा. अगर आज आपने ये कर लिया तो फिर हम आपको आज स्मॉल राइड दिलाएंगे. But make sure that this should not be a bribe कि अगर तुम ये कर लोगे तो मैं ये दूंगी. ये हर बार नहीं होना चाहिए. Make sure कि हफ्ते में 3 बार आप यूज करोगे, बाकी टाइम कुछ नहीं यूज करोगे. No bribing, because then it gets into the habit. पहले ये दिलाओ तो ये करूंगा. So rewarding also has to be used with a very intellectual, used with very precise form. Similarly, the rewarding policy should not be कि मैं eclairs दिला दूंगा, मैं nothing snack sort of thing, because eating, munching, आपका जो है बहुत unhygienic चीज है, या फिर बहुत ऐसी डिमांड्स की मुझे एरोप्लेन दिला के दोगे, वो सारी चीजें नहीं होनी चाहिए. So whatever has to be described, it's supposed to be small token thing, not the bigger things. Similarly, for negative behaviors, that means if he has not done that on time, then you will say, आज ममा आपको हग नहीं करेगी, आज आपको अलग सोना पड़ेगा, आज जो है पापा आपसे 15 minutes के लिए बात नहीं करेंगे, आज ममा आपकी जो है यहाँ बैठ के आपकी कार्टून की ड्राइंग नहीं करेगी. So these are all you have to make sure that you do that. Similarly, the child really gets frustrated कि उसको कोई समझ क्यों नहीं रहा है, because for a child who has got inattention, he thinks he is doing very well. But when there are complaints pouring in, the teacher says ये नहीं कर रहा है, मम्मी बोलती है ये नहीं करता है, पापा बोलते हैं ये तो किसी काम का नहीं है. Make sure that you have a positive energies flowing in. Don't put him a lot of negativity all around him. Similarly, make sure that you have good hobbies for him, good sports activity where he would be successful, ताकि जो है उसको जो चीज मिल रही है जिसमें वो अच्छा काम करता है वो better हो सके. And obviously, time out, discipline has to be maintained in the house for all of you, all of the house member. ये नहीं कि बाकी बच्चे जो है वो चाउमीन खा रहे हैं और इसको बोल दिया है कि नहीं आप तो जो है लौकी खाएंगे, ऐसा नहीं होगा. So if you are putting the child to task, you have to be there, make sure that the task is done. You just cannot enjoy a movie sitting in the next room. Now, the school, this is very, very, very important, because the school is the time where the child spends a maximum of time. So tell the teacher that this child should have to sit next to the teacher, so that every now and then the teacher can interrupt him. Like you saw in the video, the mother was interrupting. कि ये क्या कर रहे हो शौर्य, ये क्या हो गया? Similarly, the teacher has to tell कि शौर्य इधर देखो, because as soon as the inattention sets in, the child will go into his own word. So tell him, वो बार बार उसको बुलाती रहेगी. Similarly, थोड़ा सा एक्स्ट्रा टाइम दे देंगे बच्चे को अपना टास्क कंप्लीट करने के लिए. अगर एग्जाम जो है वो 2 घंटे का हो रहा है, give them the special provision of completing the task in next 2.5 hours or so. Similarly, there are always these schools. I know a lot of schools in Gurgaon, a majority of them have started this practicing of having assigned a study buddy. वो बाजू में बच्चे के बैठेगा next to the seat, and they'll help you in the homework. The will share the contact details, because if the child has not completed his classwork, that child would really help him कि आज class में ये हुआ और जो है ऐसा ऐसा करना है. So the mothers can talk on phone on that, and then the teacher assigned this as the student study buddy for that child who has got inattention. Similarly, you can also have a shadow teacher. The purpose of the shadow teacher is that the shadow teacher will sit just behind the student as a shadow, and just थोड़ी देर में शौर्य कर लो, शौर्य इधर देखो, शौर्य ये नहीं करो. Just as soon as the teacher smells in कि something fishy is there, his interest is not there, so you can ask the student कि ये करो. Just a small tapping, and then just a speak, a word on his name. That really helps in child in concentrating. So a shadow teacher could be a mother also, but in most cases they keep, like, we have designated shadow teachers which work in schools, and they are specially special educators which work as shadow teachers. And this I've already told you, being allowed to take tasks in less distracting environment. Now, so when to give the medication? क्या एक बार medication start होगी तो रोज देनी है, हफ्ते में 2 दिन देनी है, मतलब what is the routine like? So a child who has got predominantly inattentive type of ADHD, उसको जो है खाली school time में दे देंगे medication. Though we call as drug vacation, कि हम Saturday, Sunday या जिस दिन जो है दशहरा holidays है, जिस दिन दिवाली का दिन है, जिस दिन छुट्टी है, उस दिन हमें देने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है, because we are giving basically for the studies. If you feel like it's only for the studies, then you give only for the school days. Similarly, if you feel कि जो है नहीं, बच्चे को जो है दूसरे बच्चों के साथ इंटरेक्शन करने में भी प्रॉब्लम हो रही है, वो इतना इनअटेंटिव है, उसका कोई दोस्त नहीं बना, वो बहुत पीछे रह गया है क्लास में, then I think you should give the medication daily without fail. Similarly, a child who has got शाम को, there are certain things where you want to do only in the evening. So the child comes from the coaching and he now wants to read on his own. So that is the time you really have to give some extra dosing, which is small acting, immediate effect of dosing. And you have to give only on those days where he really requires to work and require concentration. तो एक तो सुबह देते हैं medication जो पूरा दिन काम करती है, but by the end of the day, the effects start waning. And if you want during exam time, you want extra attention during in the evening, you can supplement that in the evening for those days. So what is the optimal dose? Everybody has got a different optimal dose. Every child is different. So whatever it is, the maximum thing is that you have to have the maximum target achieved and with the minimal side effect. So everybody in India is basically about side effect to nahi hoga, ma'am, side effect to nahi hoga. And they're like so much pissed off ki side effect nahi hona chahiye. Effect ho nahi ho, side effect nahi hona chahiye. So anyways, you should know the side effects so that you would be able to tell to the parents. Just a second. So these are the side effects for the stimulant medication. Number one, the most important thing is appetite decrease. Yes, it is going to happen. So what you can counsel is that after heavy breakfast, give this medication. So the mother is satisfied कि मैंने खूब सारा खाना खिला दिया है उसको, because the lunch time would be disastrous. अगर आपने morning में दिया है तो lunch time जो है, the child won't have the appetite, he will not eat, and the mother will come running to you. इसने तो खाना छोड़ दिया, अब क्या होगा मेरे बच्चे का? So what you have to tell it कि जो है वो रात के समय, the dinner has to be a lavish 7-course meal you can serve, because by the time dinner times come in, the effect of the medication just weans off. Tell the mother, whatever you want to feed your child, give it in the dinner. You can have all 7 course, including of everything. Just try to skip the lunch time, because the lunch would be not that great, because the stimulants basically decrease the appetite. So also tell that give high protein diet so that the child, whatever the quantity of the food would be less in the lunch. So try to improve the quality of the food. So that has to be high on protein and high calorie diet, and frequent snacking is allowed in these children. The other side effect is tics. Now, tics could be because of ADHD, because it acts as a comorbidity along with ADHD, and also it is the side effect of the medication. So make sure when you take the history, take note of कि बच्चे को tics तो नहीं है, because कई बार ADHD में tics associated होते हैं. That's very frequent. That's very common. We see a lot of children with tics with ADHD. So that you know कि जो है जब आपने ADHD की medication start करी तो उसके बाद tics तो नहीं आ गए. So you should know both of the things. For this, you don't have to do anything. अगर बहुत ज़्यादा problem हो रही है, then you can change the medication and we can put it to different medication. Now, poor growth. For few months together, maybe the child weight won't increase, or he may have a straight line on the growth weight line. But the thing is, like, in the long run, it has never been affected. It has been shown in the studies that the child achieved proper weight and proper height in the long run. So tell the parents the height would not be affected in the long run. हो सकता है कि weight कुछ महीनों भर के लिए stable रहे, कुछ सालों के लिए stable रहे. Dizziness, yes, with some children you experience dizziness. Tell the parent कि थोड़ा बहुत कई बार हल्का सा घूम सकता है, कैसे लगेगा उसको थोड़ा dizzy हो रहा है, but कुछ करने की जरूरत नहीं है, ये अपने आप ठीक हो जाता है. Now, the sleep problem, as Dr. Prabhjot has already highlighted, that ADHD could be associated as a comorbidity. It could have insomnias and concerns with the sleep. And similarly with the medication too. So make sure that you take a sleep history in a very good account beforehand so that you don't disturb it कि ये stimulant का side effect है या पहले से ही बच्चे में था ऐसा. Similarly, mood lability. So this is the time where I have to stop stimulant medication because we've seen a lot. I don't know about the other experience, but mood lability, I've seen in a lot, and I really have to stop medication, stimulant medication. The child will have a lot of emotional concerns और बहुत सारा चीजें हो सकती हैं. So make sure that you stop this and can start some other one. Similarly, rebound symptoms. Rebound symptoms mean as soon as the effect of the medicine will start waning off, then the rebound symptoms may start. You can tell the parents कि इसके बाद तो ये पहले जैसा हो जाएगा. So उसमें होने दो, उसमें तो कोई problem नहीं है, because at that point of time you don't have to work with him. Let him enjoy. So these are the side effects. And now what are the medications which we used? So methylphenidate is the topmost. It's the most beautiful medication. It works beautifully well. So we have got two types basically. Number one is the short acting, and the number one is the delayed acting, or the SR, or the long acting. So the long acting works basically, if you give in the morning, it works basically till the evening, and in fact till late evenings, like till 7 o'clock also it acts. And this is the one which is most commonly used, but the problem is that's very expensive. Whereas the one who's got the normal plain methylphenidate, it is a cheaper version, but then you have to supplement another with a second dosing at around 4 o'clock or sometimes even at 2 o'clock. So as soon as the child comes from the school after 2:30, you feel like अब इसको पढ़ाएं कैसे? Then you have to supplement it with other one at around 2:30 or 3:30 or somewhere around 4 when the child starts reading again. So what is the medication? This you can read obviously in any book. You always start low. This is not weight dependent. So the methylphenidate is like you start with 5 milligram and then you increase it like 5 milligram. So you can go till 35 milligram, which is less than 20 in a child, which is less than 25 kg. And you can go to 60 milligram in a child more than 25 kg. So the only thing is like it is not weight dependent. Similarly, the other drug is non-stimulant, which is atomoxetine. Now this comes in 3 strengths, 10, 18, and 25. This is weight dependent. You start with 0.5 milligram per kg per day, and then you titrate after 3 days. Then you again increase, you titrate after 3 days, and it may take a month time to see कि कितना बच्चे को कितनी dose चाहिए. So the maximum dose is 100 milligram per day or 1.4 milligram per kg, whichever is lesser. So again, 2 to 6 weeks of medication may be needed. मतलब वही महीना लग जाता है. We take a month time to find out which medication, how much is appropriate for a child. Or agar side effects obviously are severe, then you can decrease the dose or change to some other one. So now, for how long are you going to give this medication? So once the child reaches a good improvement thing and it is stable for the 6 months, then found out कि कब उसके vacations आ रहे हैं, दिवाली vacation कब आ रहे हैं, दशहरा या फिर summer vacation. Basically, I choose summer vacation or winter vacation as the tapering time, because then it's the time when the child is at an enjoyable thing और पढ़ना भी नहीं है. So that is the time after 6 to 10 months of stability, you can tell the parents, let's try and see how the child does. Because as Dr. Prabhjot has already told, as the age increases, the ADHD symptomatology, खास तौर पे hyperactivity and impulsivity decreases on its own. So this is the normal, the state of the disease. So as when we were young, we used to play a lot, and now at this age, we like to sit. And as we grow older, we obviously want to sit more and not move a lot. So as this, the ADHD children also, they start the impulsivity and the hyperactivity goes, it reaches the peak at 7 years and then starts slowing down. So you can always take a trial off during the break period from the school. So, and if the symptoms reappear or after a period of remission, then you again find out what are the stresses. Did you find some stresses? ये जो है मम्मी ने पढ़ाना शुरू कर दिया, फिर उसके बाद बहुत सारा घर में कोई आ गया जो कि कंपेयर करने लग गया, बहुत सारी एंजाइटी स्टार्ट हो गई, and then again reprecipitated with the symptom of ADHD. Find out the stresses, try to remove that, and if it does not help, restart the medication, another for 7 to 8 months, and then reanalyze the child. So this is how the cycle proceeds. This we have already done. So the next one, the non-stimulant medication, that is atomoxetine. So atomoxetine sometimes really gives you a bad gastrointestinal problem. So generally it goes off by its own to tell the parents कि खूब अच्छा खाना खिलाने के बाद ही जो है ये दवाई दें, खूब भरपेट breakfast किया उसने, then only you give this. And typically it resolves on its own. और कई बार you require some Pantop or something like that. The child can also have headache. But again, this is like apne aap resolve ho jata hai. I've not seen a lot of cases, but it's documented in literature. The third thing is sedation, drowsiness. So in some children, instead of giving in the morning after the breakfast, we use this medication at bedtime. So this is very important. So I have certain children where I have to give this atomoxetine even at bedtime, because savere utte hi jab hum dete hain to uske baad wo so jata hai, school mein sona shuru kar deta hai, and this really happens. So what we do is like we hum bolte hain ki raat mein de do usko, and so that din mein wo neend nahi aaye usko. Now elevated blood pressure or heart rate. So we should know that this can cause a mild transient rise in the heart rate and blood pressure. So any child who has to be given stimulant or non-stimulant, specifically non-stimulant, a history of cardiac problems, ECG has to be taken, even though the NICE recommendation says do not take, but we take it because sometimes if it is missed, we should not be able to miss the QTC interval or Wolff-Parkinson syndrome. So we do the ECG regularly in the child before starting with the non-stimulant. And also it increases transiently the blood pressure and heart rate, which you should know. Now, these are documented. It causes suicidal ideation and hepatotoxicity and free episodes. I've never seen this. So counsel the parents on the morning, and if they are there, then you obviously have to stop the medication, although I've not seen anyone in my practice. So this was one which I was discussing. So NICE guidelines 2019 says that ECG is not to be needed. It's not needed before starting stimulants or atomoxetine. If you have taken a very good history and an examination and the family history, if everything is all right, then you should not do an ECG. But generally we do make sure, because sometimes the history is missed or the examination. So I do it. But the NICE guideline says if you do good history and examination and there's no family history, you can avoid doing an ECG before starting any of the stimulant or non-stimulant medication. So now this is very important because parents obviously ask, kya khilaएं, kaise khilaएं, kya nahi khilaएं. So the general thing is that if you give meetha, a lot of sweets, that peps you up and that causes a lot of hyperactivity, even though the NICE guidelines 2019 does not state that. They say whatever the child wants to eat, just give it. Although they say if you find out that there is a correlation between, tell the parents to maintain a diary that when he has become a lot of hyper, is there any correlation with the food? And if you think that this food is responsible, definitely you should stop that food. Apart from that, they have not said ki jo hai, stop this food or stop that food. So there's a lot of recommendation on the dietary fatty acid supplementation from a lot of some case studies and some RCTs also, which says that once you give fatty acid supplementation in treating ADHD, it works better. But according to NICE guidelines, it's not that great. But if you want to give, you can give. It's your, because there are no side effects on that. So associated condition, already Dr. Prabjot has beautifully done that. But again, I'm highlighting it because the majority of the children who have untreated ADHD, once you grow up, they land up into a lot of these conduct disorder or oppositional defiant disorder. They will start telling lies, झूठ बोलना शुरू कर देंगे. They will, या तो जो है वो पूरी तरह सबडी हो जाएंगे, कुछ काम करना सब कुछ छोड़ देंगे, or they will become very aggressive. Because I feel nobody understands them. If they are left untreated, the teacher will complain, ये पढ़ता नहीं है, लिखता नहीं है, ये homework नहीं करता. The mother will grudge, ये brush ठीक से नहीं करता, ये तोड़ता रहता है, ये करता रहता है. Everybody will complain. So I believe that because of that, because the child really feels I'm not worthy, and so slowly anxiety starts coming in, oppositional defiant starts coming in, and that is why the need of the early picking of these children and treating them aggressively Even if you don't want to start with the medication, if the child is small, you have to give a lot of behavioral therapy. You have to do a lot of school changes so that the child does well. And you really have to praise the child for everything, whatever he's small, teeny, mini he does. And don't be negative throughout. So now what they have also added is autism spectrum. Previously, it was not added. Now they say autism can exist with ADHD. No, previously it was not an idea. So autism was different and ADHD was different. Now you can add both of these conditions. Now, this again is very important. Differential diagnosis, Dr. Prabjot has already dealt. I'll just show you a small case where if you had seen the first video, so ADHD inattention type would very closely resemble your absence seizures. So this is a small child. This was like went to the psychologist for poor scholastic performance. School में जो है पीछे होने लग गई थी. मम्मी पेरेंट्स बोल रहे थे डे ड्रीमिंग करती है, टीचर बोलने लगी बहुत डे ड्रीमिंग करती है, इसको तो इसका कुछ नहीं हो सकता, अब ये बहुत पीछे जा रही है, पढ़ाई में मन नहीं लग रहा है. एंड दे वेंट टू द साइकोलॉजिस्ट कि चलो आईक्यू करा लेते हैं. वहां साथ में एडीएचडी भी डायग्नोसिस बन गई उसकी क्योंकि इनअटेंशन निकल आया. शी स्टार्टेड ऑन एडीएचडी मेडिकेशन, नथिंग वाज इंप्रूविंग एंड सडनली शी केम टू अस and then we did this hyperventilation test. We all know what this basically is. So we hyperventilated the child and this is what we got. So this is, she's gone, she's dozed off. So you can count the number of seconds. She's dozed off, mother ne utha liya, and then she's back. So these absences episodes were so small that they were taken as inattention spell. So even if you have to do an unnecessary investigation in the form, if you're not clear with the history ki kya hai, do an EEG. And this is how the EEG looks like. If this is the EEG, obviously this is not ADHD or inattention. This is absence seizure. So the treatment modality is totally different. Make sure that you take a good history. Okay. So this was really messed up. The next case, which was really messed up, was this case. So as Dr. Vivek has already told, that history is very important and the symptoms have to be present before 12 years of age. Now, this child who presented to us, वो inattention के spells के साथ present कर रहा था और फिर उसके बाद जो है, then he started having lethargy and dehydration, which was later on. But so again he went to the psychologist. उसने बोला कि नहीं, ये तो जो है बहुत inattentive हो रहा है, lethargy हो रहा है, इसको जो है ADHD हो सकता है, inattention हो सकता है, and then started working on that. But when we took the history, we found out the child was very, very good till 5 to 6 years of age. And then after 6 years of age, he started showing some symptoms. So again, you have to take care that these symptoms have to be present since the beginning. So acute sudden onset of some symptoms of inattention on hyperactivity would not be ADHD. You have to look in for some secondary causes, which already Dr. Prabjot had, and we really found out this, and this child was adrenoleukodystrophy, and the child was showing symptom of inattention, which could be the presenting sign in adrenoleukodystrophy. He was a 7-year-old male child. We did this, we did an MRI brain, and it was adrenoleukodystrophy. So make sure you take the history. When did the symptoms was first present? कब पहली बार आया? पहले कैसा था बच्चा? पहले स्कूल में अच्छा था, फिर क्या होना शुरू हुआ? So there are innumerable differential diagnoses. I just gotten these two because we just had these, and just want to show the importance that history is very much important in the case of ADHD. All those children who are bhaga bhagi jo kar rahe hain or inattentive hai, just cannot be ADHD. You have to find out the secondary cause if there are any, and make sure you find out before labeling the child just plain simple case of idiopathic ADHD. So this graph has already been done by Dr. Prabjot. I've already told that as soon as you grow with the age, so with time, the hyperactivity in impulsivity goes down with age. If you will see in the graph, the bold lines, basically, it's just after the adolescence, it's just, there's a peak up and then it goes down, 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 down and down. And then again with the impulsivity, you just go down, down, down. But with the inattention, if you will see, the inattention does not goes down. So this is the one which really requires a lot of medication. So if you'll see, the inattention does not go down very well with age. So this is the prognosticating thing. You can tell the parents this is how it does. So at 25 years of age, only 15% will meet the full criteria of ADHD and most of them won't. 65% will automatically land up into partial remission. But again, as Dr. Prabjot has already told, that they may land up into partial remission, but they may have comorbidities because of the long run if untreated. They may have anxiety, they may have depression, they may have suicidal tendencies, they may lack the confidence in life. And similarly, symptoms of inattention persist more and decline very slowly. So this is one thing which this we really have to work on, that with autism, we have got into the disability certification, but with this, ADHD is really a chronic disorder and we really have to work on. It is still not recognized as a neurodevelopmental disorder under the government organization, the Person with Disability Act, and every fraternity of who's dealing with special needs children are really fighting for to get into this certification for the disability for ADHD child. So I think, thank you. And this is all I have for today. And we'll go back. Thank you everyone for patient hearing. And we all are open for the questions, I suppose, if time allows.
For enlightening talk, as always. And beautiful talk on this practical tips you have given to the parents, for pediatrician, parents and teachers. You had did a dietary counseling during the problems, and drug intake versus drug counseling is also important. When to choose what are the side effects. So overall, very practical tip to us. Dr. Prateek is going to take some questions from the chat box.
Yes, sir. There is one question from Dr. Rajkali. I think it is for Pooja ma'am. And he has asked, if a child has both autism and ADHD, then whether the behavioral and pharmacological intervention will change somehow, or it will be the same if a child is having some isolated ADHD symptoms. I think Dr. Pooja will like to answer this question.
Okay. So the thing is, like, if you have ADHD, obviously we have already discussed what ADHD looks like. But if you have associated ADHD with autism, autism requires a lot of different treatment protocol as well as the medical treatment also. So in the behavioral mode, protocol, you have to go with a lot of occupational therapy and basically more of sensory integration or ABA therapy. So this basically with the ADHD, you require a lot of behavioral therapy, and with them, they require ABA therapy that is very different from the behavioral therapy, which we have discussed. Also, they may require other type of therapy in the form of sensory integration or occupational therapy. Similarly, for the treatment of ADHD associated with autism, a medication called as risperidone works beautifully well apart from the stimulant and non-stimulant. Although these stands out very clearly out, and you should try these first. But a lot of us have been trying with risperidone, and risperidone works beautifully well. It has been recommended both by the Indian Academy of Pediatrics along with American Academy of Pediatrics that risperidone can be used. So that's the treatment, medical management, which is different. And obviously the behavioral and ABA part is different.
Pooja ma'am, if you please stop sharing.
Okay. Ma'am, there is another question, and by Dr. Gajalakshmi, and she wants to know whether there is any role of carnosine in attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I think this is also Dr. Pooja. I think Dr. Pooja ma'am can enlighten whether any role of carnosine in attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
So who has organized this CME?
I think they can better tell this thing. Nityaji and Satyaji.
So I'll tell you what I know, and rest I leave to the organizers. So there are a lot of papers which say that yes, Cognicare works very well, L-carnosine works very well, but there are a lot of papers which say no, it does not work that beautifully well, and that is more of a placebo effect. So the thing is, like, I leave it up to the parents that I tell them, okay, this is the thing, like, There's a lot of papers. I tell you, अगर आपको करना है तो आप करिए, आपको नहीं करना है, you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. I am okay with that. You just have to tell the truth, and this is the truth. Now, to add to that truth, I'll tell Nitya sir or whosoever the organizer wants to put their inputs. Everybody is welcome to put on their inputs.
कुछ पेशेंट पे मैंने ट्राई किया है मैम कॉग्निकेयर, and it works really well.
Okay, the sir is with you.
So I think I am with Dr. Pooja.
Just to rather comment on that, we are no one. So basically, it's
I
your
think,
program.
I also follow what Dr. Pooja follows. I also leave it up to the parents. I do tell them that this is the fact. You can try it. If you feel it works, let's continue it. But then it has to be with a very strong message that the other therapies have to go on. Like they should not be compromised. So I think that is a good approach.
Yeah, I agree to that. And also I've seen, now this is an open platform. Let me tell you that once we are using it to the recommended dose as prescribed in the books, I've seen hyperactivity coming in. To be very frank, I use it in a very low dose. I don't recommend the regular doses, which the recommended doses are 10 ml twice a day, that the child becomes very hyper. I do it in a very low dose, and yes, sometimes it works, but then I don't know whether it's the therapies which are working, whether this is medication which is working, or whether this is stimulants which are working. So I don't know. But yes, I use Cognicare in a lesser dose because I've already reported this finding of mine to the company people that I use it in a lesser dose, and they said, "Ha, ye hai." So I need the input from all other also.
Yeah, ma'am. One thing is that what I find good about this carnosine is it doesn't have any adverse effects. And in our part of the India, if we only go on giving therapy and this atomoxetine or methylphenidate, sometimes they are too much obsessed, especially in Uttarakhand area, they're too much obsessed with these nutraceuticals. So
I think, Pratik, it is not only Uttarakhand, even down south it is the same.
Yeah.
Same thing all over.
I usually give because it has no adverse effects.
Yes,
and I have found, I also exactly agree with Dr. Pooja because I am starting all the things simultaneously. So what is the true effect of carnosine? But I think it really works somewhat. Even in autism, I have seen it working.
So I agree. I agree. One or two parents have come back and told after 3 months that this medicine is very good. So we have different reactions. So it probably does work.
So the take-home message is give it. Let's see, because we are not doing any harm to the child. So let's give it. Yeah.
If you don't do any good, don't do any harm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to share as a person who has brought this molecule in India. We have completed 7 studies. And today we have just completed, I was with SCARF. SCARF is a Schizophrenia Research Foundation in Chennai, which is almost like NIMANS. They do specialized treatment for schizophrenia. They've just completed placebo-controlled double-blind study. You can go to CTRA registry and click L-carnosine study. One of the study will be in a SCARF. They have done on negative symptoms. The negative symptoms are mainly cognitive domain, you see in schizophrenia. And they found, along with atomoxetine or risperidone, where there is no role of these psychopharmacological interventions in negative symptoms, this L-carnosine has helped them to work very well in few domains like executive function, memory, etc. So I was very happy to get this data feedback from SCARF, and it is going to be published in Indian Journal of Psychiatry and International Journal of Psychiatry, probably in July itself. And as the result was so overwhelming, now NIMANS has come forward for a study on a biomarker. We have not heard about biomarkers being used in schizophrenia or Alzheimer's. But now they have come forward along with biomarkers like, we have a few biomarkers like, psychotropic drugs where we monitor the cortisol levels, we monitor the certain protein levels, which can help, we can identify the improvement along with clinical improvement. So this is just for academic reason I wanted to share with you.
The thing is, like, we don't see a lot of schizophrenia in children now.
Yeah, I understand.
Like, our knowledge about schizophrenia, and that directly goes to the psychiatrist.
I understand.
So the thing is,
this is one of the domains which I wanted to share, that we are going on research on various levels.
No. Research you require a lot of research. Definitely. Yes. This is a good stream that we are doing a lot of research. Yes. Let's see where it does stuck and we can help the children. Yeah, why not?
Yes, ma'am. Very appropriately communicated by you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think today's session we have come to an end. Dr. Vivek, Dr. Prabjot, and Dr. Pooja, all the three speakers nicely covered the part of ADHD. We wanted as we wanted it planned it, and the therapy part, which was the really difficult part, Dr. Pooja covered it so nicely. Well, there are a lot of controversies, but the future trials will clear the controversies. And I think what is the current recommendation that Dr. Pooja has already spoken, and the evaluation part also Dr. Prabjot covered very nicely. So I thank all the three speakers, Rajiv sir and Dr. Inder sir, for their participation making this academic endeavor successful. And we will in future also, we will, and from Pediatric Neurology Division, we will be extremely happy in collaborating with all the speakers. Rajiv sir, as usual, will continue to work with him. And Pooja ma'am, especially whenever we will be working on something in autism or ADHD, I will give the same topic, the treatment. I will remember you, ma'am. This was an excellent presentation. And Dr. Vivek has covered this pathogenesis, which is a little bit a difficult part. And there are a lot of things are changing, but still Dr. Vivek covered up to very nicely. And even the scales, Connors and Vanderbilt, I think everybody has done a wonderful job. Kudos to the team.
I will also say thank you to Dr. Pooja. So many practical tips for giving to our patients on daily basis. So I am happy with it.
Yeah, ma'am. We can actually plan something like I can send some patients actually who are financially well-to-do to your center in Delhi, ma'am. Because we have a lot of patients and more than 200 autism and more than 100 ADHD now. So I think
number is increasing.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. The numbers is quite high, ma'am.
And, I don't know whether we are seeing more now or it is actually increased.
No, it is like increased. Dr. Prabjot, it is increasing.
It's increasing.
So
I think almost 50% of the kids that I see in COVID are only ASD.
Yeah. I saw
70 cases are increasing, definitely.
Every day I see 17 to 18 new kids. Purano ko nahi count karti main. 18 new kids in the whole OPD. Just look at it, ASD. And everybody is telling the same thing. I think, pata nahi kya ho raha hai. I don't know.
Absolutely right, ma'am. Actually, I was in Hyderabad talking to Dr. Lokesh Lingappa in Rainbow. The number of new cases are going up because of, the digital screening, screen time, no socialization. The children are not playing with peer group, high supervision by parents, a lot of factors coming up. Behavioral issues.
That has been done where this coronavirus actually, there is an arterial system in the brain where the coronavirus acts to ACE2 receptors. And ACE2 receptor present in the brain also. So it goes in the brain and affect the central cortex area, prefrontal cortex area. They have written that in the American some research there. And there is some psychiatric disorder. They are in the adults as well as in children both.
I think something is happening. Maybe corona. I don't know, but number is definitely increasing.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, actually, ma'am, this COVID-19 lockdown has even the meta-analysis which we did, we found that anxiety, depression, and other things are significantly increasing. And my purpose of doing this CME was in Uttarakhand, especially, ma'am. Actually, Dr. Rajiv sir can help us. Lot of cases of ADHD and autism. I think it is the duty of mainly the pediatricians can help because they see the bulk of cases. So they can actually diagnose and they help us. So autism, ADHD, intellectual disability, and cerebral palsy. We need to really work a lot more in this state because this is the state I think we have just in the verge of improving the healthcare.
Yes.
In the actually the southern states and the Delhi, there are a lot of very tertiary care centers, well-to-do centers. But in Uttarakhand, the healthcare sector is a little bit in the, it's now improving. Even in the nearby western Uttar Pradesh districts, So I think Rajiv sir can help us in actually taking this message to all the pediatricians, so that we are always there to, whenever they want to refer from any part of the Uttarakhand or Dehradun, we will be helpful to them, and any part, even on the telephonically or in physically, we are available. And I think we have to have the children in any possible way. I think you can.
If suppose pediatrician has missed the ADHD and a child land up in adolescent period or in adulthood, he is not good in study. Like he is often forgettable. He is attention deficit, because attention deficit persists in adulthood also. So what is the treatment in adulthood? Should you prescribe medication for them also?
Yes, sir. So the criteria are different. So till adolescent we have already covered, but adult criteria are different. They have their DSM-5 criteria for adulthood also for diagnosing them. And yes, the treatment remains the same. And also then there's a lot of comorbidities. So generally we send them to the psychiatrist. Psychiatrist will add anti-anxiety medication, antipsychotic also, and ADHD, and bipolar के लिए भी दे देंगे, वो कुछ देते रहते हैं.
तो side effect बहुत शुरू आते हैं आने के बाद.
Most of them are highly sedated, but then the life is very difficult without the medication. We have seen a lot of them with not surviving. Without antidepressant, they cannot move, they cannot work. So you just have to titrate कि सोए भी नहीं बहुत ज़्यादा, drowsy भी नहीं हो, and but they require medication. In some of the patients, like we really require medication, antidepressant and all in long run.
So thank you to all of you, and as a very good meeting, Dr. Prateek and Dr. Pooja, Dr. Prabjot, Dr. Vivek, all the faculty member, and especially Dr. Pooja, you came here, and last meeting also we were very happy with your knowledge and your speech, your way of talking, your way of speech is very good. Actually, कहते हैं ना कि कान में सीधे जाके घुस जाती है आवाज बिल्कुल जाके. So that's very good. And,
right.
I thank Dr. Indra Kumar also. Dr. Prateek, your initiative of pediatric neurology in Uttarakhand is appreciable. We all send patients to AIIMS Rishikesh to Dr. Prateek, and we have put your name, especially Dr. Prateek's name, because he used to organize all the seminars, all the CMEs in Uttarakhand, as well as he has coordinated with AIIMS Delhi also. So Dr. Prateek Panda name is there in the IAP Dehradun registry actually. Every doctor has his number.
Well, thank you, Rajesh sir. I have been so grateful to you. And it's my privilege that I can help out the children in need. And
he's Amitabh Bachchan of Uttarakhand now.
Oh,
right, ma'am,
right. So now I request Satyanarayan ji to give the vote of thanks, and I think we can subsequently close the session, and we look forward to continue to further CME activities. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful evening. All about ADHD we have heard, listened today. Diagnosis, treatment, interventions, therapies, including L-carnosine. So I'm very happy. There was a very good deliberation. It was most needed, as Dr. Prateek said. And Rajiv sir, sincerely thank you very much for organizing such a wonderful program. And I thank the speakers, Dr. Pooja ma'am, always close to us, Dr. Prabjot ma'am, and Vivek sir. A wonderful speech today. Thank you very much, sir, and good luck to everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Take care. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all the panelists, doctors, and the viewers, Satya sir and Ajay. Good night to everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.